Back when I was in film school, one of my professors gave me an article he had published that was about the significance of what he called the 5 cyberfilms of 1995. 5 big-budget, high-concept Hollywood movies that dealt with the emergence of the internet age. Since I have the memory of a goldfish, I can't really remember what his thesis was, but I do remember that the article was about how pop culture deals with new technology and how the cyberpunk genre in particular was being used to explore the possibilities and pitfalls waiting for us on what we used to call the information superhighway. Since 1995 is now 30 years behind us, I thought I should revisit the topic and talk about these 5 cyberfilms. They might look antiquated and even a little ridiculous now, but back then, they were on the cutting edge of sci-fi cinema, and today, they are more relevant than you might expect.
Four, three, two, one. Welcome to our show,
Hack the Planet.
Hack the Planet! And for those
Dade Murphy, formerly known as the legendary hacker Zero Cool, has finally been freed from his court-ordered abstinence from the internet. At a new school in New York City, he quickly ingratiates himself into the young hacker subculture. However, when one fledgling hacker breaks into the wrong computer and threatens to uncover the crimes of a security expert at a big corporation, Dade's new group of friends finds that their fun and games have put their lives and their futures at stake. With the evil hacker known as the Plague blackmailing his mother, can Dade find a way to help them, or will he betray them to save himself and his family?
In January 1986, shortly after his arrest for breaking into a computer he wasn't supposed to, the notorious hacker The Mentor, aka Lloyd Blankenship, wrote a short essay called The Conscience of a Hacker. This essay, written in the irreverent cyberpunk style of William Gibson, became famous upon its publication in the hacker e-zine Frack, offering a stark look at a youth counterculture raised on computer screens and more than a little love of anarchic freedom. The Mentor describes growing up with a disdain for school and the conservative adult world, and he ends by offering a prescient look at what the internet will one day become, pioneered by criminals looking for information from a world that seems intent on denying it to them. November of 1988 saw the release of the Morris Worm, a computer worm created by a graduate student at Cornell University that wound up infecting around 2,000 computers connected to the internet, in a time when there were only about 60,000 such computers, causing widespread economic damage. Its designer, Robert Tappan Morris, was the first person tried under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA, and he was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $10,000 fine. Fast forward to 1994, when the screenwriter Raphael Moreau, inspired to write about hacking subculture in the wake of the CFAA, was introduced to Mark Abene, better known as Fiber Optic, at a meeting for the New York-based magazine 2600 The Hacker Quarterly. Abene spent most of that year in prison for hacking, and his story, combined with other stories Moreau gathered from the underground hacking scene, along with the Mentor's Manifesto and the prosecution of Robert Morris, became the basis for a screenplay simply titled Hackers. This screenplay wound up at United Artists under the stewardship of the English director Ian Softly, known at the time for his work on television commercials and music videos, along with his only film credit at the time, Backbeat. Softly was a fan of club culture, starting in Manchester in the late 70s and early 80s with bands like T-Rex and Happy Mondays, and had even spent many nights clubbing with cast and crew during the production of Backbeat. Since Raphael Moreau saw his screenplay as a commentary on culture, more so than a commentary on technology, Ian Softly was perhaps the perfect choice for director, given his familiarity with the underground scene. To play the lead role of Dade Murphy, aka Zero Cool aka Crash Override, they cast a then unknown 22-year-old Johnny Lee Miller, a television actor who would hit it big a year later with Trainspotting.
Pussy galore, right? What a total misnomer. I mean, I wouldn't touch her with yours.
His primary love interest in the film, Kate Acid Burn Libby, is played by a 19-year-old Angelina Jolie. Jolie, well known to insiders due to her father being Jon Voight, had only been in a couple of films, the direct-to-video Cyborg 2 and the indie flick Without Evidence, though she also appeared in a handful of music videos. Miller and Jolie would fall in love during the filming of Hackers, and they got married the following year. Though, as Hollywood marriages tend to go, they got divorced shortly afterward. The up-and-coming Matthew Lillard, who was actually 25 at the time, plays the goofy Emmanuel serial killer Goldstein, a year before he would go mainstream playing a real serial killer in Scream, and a couple of years before playing a similar role in one of my cult favorites, SLC Punk. The rest of the hacking group is made up of Lawrence Mason as Nikon, Renely Santiago as Phantom Freak, and Jesse Bradford, who at 16 was the only actor young enough to actually be in high school, as Joey. Meanwhile, the black hat villain of the piece, Eugene Belford, aka The Plague, is played by the great Fisher Stevens, while his flunky, Hal, is played by none other than Penn Jillette. Lorraine Bracco plays Margot, and future star of The Wire Wendell Pierce plays Secret Service agent Richard Gill. There are also a few fun cameos, including David A. Stewart of Eurythmics and the famous salsa artist Mark Anthony. Filming on Hackers took place in and around both Manhattan and London in late 1994, with locations including Battery Park, One Liberty Plaza, the newly built campus of Stuyvesant High School, and the Brentford Public Baths, where they built a nightclub out of an indoor pool that apparently has enough historical significance that the production team had to be extra careful not to damage it. Surprisingly, most of the computer sequences in the film were made using practical models and rotoscoping rather than CGI, because the director felt that CGI was too flat and uninteresting. The memorable costumes were designed by Roger K. Burton of Quadrophenia fame. Burton studied real-life hacker fashion at the time and was disappointed to discover that it was fairly non-existent, just a lot of people in boring black clothes and jeans. So he decided the outfits in Hackers should be more vivid and lively, combining the gaudy extremes of the 90s with a more timeless mod look and a lot of iconoclastic utilitarian affectations. On top of that, he wanted to give the Hackers an international multicultural aesthetic that could be purchased in New York City on a budget, to demonstrate the lack of international borders online. And now I get to gush over the soundtrack. Softly chose to highlight the burgeoning 90s electronica scene because he wanted his movie to sound like the future, and he had a prophetic sneaking suspicion that the bands being featured were about to become popular in a big way. At the risk of outing myself as a mid to late 90s party raver and EDM head, this soundtrack has some of my all-time favorites, including The Prodigy, Massive Attack, Underworld, Left Field, and Kruder and Dorfmeister, and it heavily features over the opening credits perhaps the greatest trance house track ever written, Halcyon Plus On Plus On by Orbital. Seriously, that song has been my jam for 30 years now, and I had forgotten I first heard it in this movie. As always, when I talk about music, I wish I could play some of these tracks for you, and maybe show you some of my cringy midlife crisis rave moves, but YouTube doesn't even offer revenue sharing for these tracks, not that I'd be willing to sacrifice 55% of my ad revenue anyway. As for my rave moves, well, I'll show them off if this video gets 10,000 likes. Hackers released in September of 1995 to pretty poor reviews that tended to appreciate its style but little else. It also bombed at the box office, only taking in a gross of $7.5 million in its initial domestic run against a $20 million budget. However, out of all 5 of the so-called Cyberfilms of 1995, this one is by far the biggest cult hit, remaining hugely popular even to this day, with late-night screenings, university campus tours, and endlessly quoted dialogue becoming a fixture across the globe. According to Vice, it is considered the greatest hacker movie ever made by real-life hackers. Though I suspect that has a lot to do with the fact that it makes hacking look a lot cooler, more powerful, and more chic than it is in real life. Before I get to my opinion on the movie, I did just want to remind you guys to hit the, what was that? What happened? Oh man, not this guy again. What the? How did he even do that? I don't have sprinklers in this room.
Eric. What are you doing talking about a 90s movie? You know that's my territory, so I'm gonna have to take over for a few minutes. I hope that's okay. Don't worry, I won't be long. There's some things I gotta say. Computers in the 90s were a sight to behold. They were a bit clunky and not too aesthetically pleasing. Well, I mean, except for these. How can you compete with that? We loved see-through things in the 90s. But for us kids, computers felt more like an adult thing to use. Unless, of course, you were in computer lab in elementary school and you got a chance to play Oregon Trail or Number Munchers. We don't talk about the original Prince of Persia. Hate that game. When Hackers debuted, it felt like a glimpse into the future. A wild neon digital frontier that you could physically enter. Sure, the movie took some creative liberties, turning cyberspace into floating data towers and roller coaster circuits, but honestly, our real internet was a little bit more memorable. AOL chat rooms were buzzing with people asking ASL. GeoCities pages were in a constant state of under construction. Message boards were filled with strangers arguing the timeless question of who's the better superhero, Batman or Superman. Not much has changed, but we did have that beautiful, timeless, painful sound of connecting to the internet. You know, some people get turned on by that. Not me. Just letting you know. Sure, Hackers had the sleek and futuristic Gibson, but we had our own mainframe. It was a folder on my desktop called Cool Stuff. That's where I kept all those poorly photoshopped nude photos I found of Star Trek 7 of 9. Just admitted that out loud. Oh, and also Chip, my virtual dog. Miss that guy. Now, while Dade was hacking into his high school mainframe to change his classes, I was hacking into our Intel P5 Pentium so that every time somebody logged in, they would hear Homer Simpson singing Nacho Man.
Nacho Man. I want to be a Nacho Man.
That'll never get old. Sure, hackers might have exaggerated a little bit of the computer culture for our entertainment, but I feel like it captured the spirit of the time. That sense that computers gave you unlimited freedom. And for a while, they did. The internet was the Wild West. Everyone had their own weird little corner. Pages covered in spinning GIFs. I ain't saying GIFs. Get over it. Looping song clips, and guest books filled with people saying, "Cool site, dude." Thank you. It's really sweet. Fast forward 30 years and the internet isn't what we imagined. What used to be fun and personal now feels sterile. A carefully curated space begging for your attention with every click and swipe. You see, back then you used to have to commit to getting online. You'd log in and you'd wait through that glorious dial-up symphony. Oh, there it is again. I love it. Ooh. And you'd actually have to think about what you wanted to do or look up.
Okay guys, the first thing that you need to know is that the internet is amazing and it's changing every day.
And we all remember when we had to wait for our mom to get off the phone from ordering that Thigh Master on QVC just so that we could use the internet. But thankfully we had something to keep us entertained at the time, like playing a game of solitaire. Try playing solitaire now on your computer. Ads everywhere. Ads for toenail fungus medication that strangely looks like Parmesan cheese. AI ads telling you to wrap aluminum foil around your doorknobs for protection. Protection from what? What is it that you're not telling me? I'm kind of scared. I kind of want to do that now. Ads for whatever this is. Seriously, what is this? $38 drugstore creams that replace a $21,000 facelift. And who could forget the ones that target senior citizens about Social Security benefits? I'm getting those, and I'm not even old yet. I mean, I'm old, but I'm not Social Security old. Ads, ads, ads. I hate ads. And if you finally make it through to play a game of solitaire from the ads in every corner of the screen, it'll now show you an unskippable ad. Don't even try to multitask and do something else while the ad plays through. No, it knows when you're not looking at it. When you've clicked on something else, it forces you to sit through it. And I know what you're saying. Why don't you just disconnect your computer from the internet so you can play a game of solitaire? Number one, I shouldn't have to do that. Number two, I've tried that, and I get this message instead. What happened to us? I don't mean to sound like an old man yelling at a cloud right now, even though I am. Ooh, the cloud. I am yelling at the cloud. There we go. It's updated for the 2020s. But rewatching Hackers brought back this weird nostalgic optimism for a future that never came to be. For all the hysteria about the dark corners of the web, the 90s internet felt more genuine. Look, I know I'm supposed to be talking about the movie Hackers. It is one of my favorite movies. But I'll be honest, Eric probably covered everything that I would want to cover anyway. And he'd do a way better job at it. But for me, back in 1995, I only really recognized two actors that were in the movie. Mr. The Plague, who played the very problematic Indian scientist in the movie Short Circuit.
As we're fond of saying in my country, marketplace makes dull home for rodents. Where are you from anyway? Bakersfield originally.
And Freak, who also played a high school student in the 1995 drama starring Michelle Pfeiffer called Dangerous Minds. Full disclosure, I was terrified to go to high school in my small hometown because of this movie. I was an idiot, so, some things never change. Knock knock, sweetheart. I need to use the phone, so get off the internet. Okay? Thanks. All right. Look, my mom's got to make a phone call, so I'm going to leave you with this before I go. Call it an Easter egg, or Easter eggs. There was a blink and you'll miss moment during Dade's dream sequence that had me wear out the rewind button on my VCR back in 1995. I will leave it at that. So until my next collaboration with the Unapologetic Geek, I'm Mike O'Connor. Hack the planet, friends. Hack the planet! Oh, great soundtrack, by the way, too. I don't know if Eric said that. It's a great soundtrack. And sorry, Eric, for turning on the sprinklers in your house. Didn't even know you had those. Weird. Later.
Yeah, great. Do I have my channel back now? Anyway, that was Mike O'Connor from I Miss the 90s, everybody. I don't know how he keeps getting into my channel, but maybe if you go over to his channel and give him some more subbies, he'll leave mine alone. Okay? So anyway, now that that's over with, let's get back to my topic, my opinion on Hackers. Man, he ate all my fries. As a movie about cyberspace, Hackers is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, it does get a lot of the jargon and technical details correct, more than you'd think, and it highlights real-life stories on the subject, from a kid getting convicted of violating the CFAA to a supposed security expert secretly siphoning funds from a corporation like Richard Pryor in Superman 3. On the other hand, the movie fails at its most difficult task, visualizing hacking in a way that is both believable and interesting for the audience. Like Mike said, the movie makes the choice to show cyberspace as this neon-soaked cityscape, or to show something resembling a real-life worm when talking about a computer worm. This is the film's Achilles heel, because it asks far too much from an audience's suspension of disbelief. By 1995, the vast majority of people were familiar enough with computers to know that internal code looks nothing like that. At 16 years old, it made me pretty dismissive of the movie too. However, I've come to appreciate and even love Hackers in spite of all that, because the movie isn't actually about cyberspace, not really. It's a movie about teen culture in the 90s, with all its vibrant plastic colors and goofy eccentricities, and from that perspective, it succeeds. Dade Murphy is a Midwestern kid thrown into the heart of New York City and has to prove himself, with hacking being little more than a common element that brings him together with a new group of friends as well as getting him into trouble so the plot can happen. In fact, from its narrative formula, the story plays out more like a teen sports movie than anything else, one in which the sport happens to be industrial espionage. So, while I wouldn't go so far as to call Hackers a flawless film, I do think it qualifies as a sci-fi classic, if for no other reason than the pure nostalgia of recognizing what it was like to be a teenager in the mid-1990s. And yeah, Mike, I know what eggs you're talking about. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What's your favorite movie about hacking? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time when we'll finish up with a jacked-in wire trip like no other, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
No, really. I'm not an addict. I'm not. Can I get some more coffee?